Hello and welcome back to I'm Still Playing. I took a very much needed break over the last week for Thanksgiving, and I hope that you got a little time off as well. And if you celebrate Thanksgiving, had a great time with family and friends and what have you. And during the break, I was actually feeling the urge to kind of get out from behind the desk a little bit and maybe just go do some comfort gaming on the couch. And I needed a kind of game where I could get up at a moment's notice and sit back down at a moment's notice because my wife was hosting a party, well, hosting 15 people and two dogs at our house over Thanksgiving. And I needed to be able to basically get up at a moment's notice and go help unload groceries or whatever was needed right then. So for me, that meant a little Honkai Star Rail on the PS5 over the week. As some of you may or may not know, my actual preferred genre of game is MMOs. Those are the games I definitely play the most, or open world RPGs of any sort. But recently, there have been some really quality games coming out, gacha games that have come out on the console and on the PC, as well as mobile, of course. And as I was playing Honkai Star Rail, I got to thinking, there's a lot in this game that I would love to see in my favorite MMO. And so I decided, well, maybe that's the first thing I'll talk about when we get back. So without further ado, here are 5 things from Gacha Games that I've played in the past that I would really love to see more of in Western MMOs. Okay, so for the first thing that I'd like to see brought over from some Gacha Games into Western MMOs is bringing open world traversal up to date, making it just a little bit more modern. Granted, not all Gacha Games have any open world traversal, but those that do are doing it really, really well. I've said it before and I will say it again. I think Wuthering Waves has some of the best open world traversal of any open world RPG out there. And it's not just the way in which, all of the different movement modes that they have, like gliding and the ability to run straight up the side of a cliff, which is all just really fun and makes the getting around the world a joy. But they've actually done a really good job of blending the animations together as you move from one mode to another. So that makes the whole experience just feel smooth and seamless, really. Now, there are some MMOs out there that have done some specialized things around movement or around open world traversal. For instance, Blade and Soul had this thing called Dragon Pulse riding, which was just amazing. It was so very, very cool. And they had great accompanying music that swelled up behind it and what have you. And that was just a lot of fun. But I think most MMOs these days are tackling open world traversal improvements through mounts in vehicles, right? Pretty much every MMO out there has had flying as some sort of, an improvement for the past decade or so. But only recently have MMOs started to sort of tackle the idea of that traversal could be a fun part of gameplay. You certainly saw this with dragon riding in the Dragonflight expansion from WoW. And for the most part, I think it's been fairly successful for Blizzard, right? It was probably the first time that they said, hey, let's try to do something to make, getting around the game actually fun. And people seem to have responded really well to that. And they doubled down on it in the War Within expansion because you now have the ability to convert any of your mounts to dragon riding. And it looks like they're just going to keep improving upon that going forward. So it's been nice to see these sort of things, coming around in MMOs. But I'd still love to see just the basic run cycle and getting around the game animations and movement brought up to date with modern games. And speaking of getting around, that brings me to item number 2 of things that I would like to see MMOs take from gachas, and that is to reward open world exploration again. Let's face it, exploration in MMOs has been dead for a really long time, right? Map mods uncover all of the fog of war for you. Quest markers on your map show you where all the quests are in order to go and get them. And even if you do go poking your head into some little corner of the world, there's very little there to reward you for it. There may be a small chest that contains a toy or a trinket or a little bit of gold and some Dalaran sharp, right? But Gacha Games, on the other hand, they're poking chests and puzzles and difficult encounters into every little corner of the world. And when you unlock those things, the rewards are actually worth it, right? They're somewhat substantial. And that's really all I'd like to see MMOs do again. Now, in the past, that's not to say there aren't chests out in the world in World of Warcraft. There are. And Handy Notes will tell you exactly where to go and get them. But even when you find those things, the rewards are rarely worth it, right? They're like I said, they're very small things. So what I'd most like to see is MMOs kind of bring puzzles and chests and other rewards for exploration back into the world and then actually make it worthwhile for you to do. Make the rewards substantial, if you will. Okay, so the third thing that I would like to see more MMOs implement from Gacha Games are better side activities, or more side activities, I should say, and each of these having sort of shorter session links, and that's hard to say. So when you log into your typical Gacha Games, it goes like this. First of all, there's a collection of things you do every single day immediately, and that's the stuff that, consume your energy or what have you to advance your battle pass. And then there may be some story content for you to go and do. And the story content is great. It's what I want to play in these games, right? It's either advance along the campaign, it's got cinematics, it may or may not have voiceover, but just solid quest-like content for you to go and move the story along. And then if you've completed all of the story content and all of the character backstories and what have you for the current update, then there are a ton of sort of side activities for you to do. And some of those side activities are, basically advancing your characters as well as you can in the current gacha. And some of them are completely tangential and have no resemblance to the actual gameplay of that actual gacha game. I mean, in Honkai Star Rail right now, they have you doing a rhythm game as one of the side games for you to play in their, turn-based action RPG, if you would. And none of those sort of side games or side session things that you do, any of them take longer than 10 or 15 minutes to do on any given take. So I can always log into a gacha game, play for, get my dailies done, and then play for 10 or 15 minutes, and then log out and then go on and get about the things. And I just think that MMOs could benefit not necessarily from all of these types of side games, but some of them, and also just making the types of things, the activities that I can jump into, play for 15 or 20 minutes and jump out of. Now, I will say that World of Warcraft has implemented a few things recently that I think are leaning towards exactly what I'm talking about. For instance, I think delves are a fantastic sort of short session length activity that don't require a lot of people to organize, or any for that matter, and you can drop in at any given time and then step back out of, and and still have a really sort of valuable rewards at the end of it. And in the fact, the recent 30 Years of Warcraft live stream, they talked about a new game mode that's coming in the new expansion that's going to have a racing mode in Goblin Town, right? Where you can build custom vehicles that have, where you customize grip and acceleration and top speed, and then, perform these races around the town. And I think that's just fun. And it has nothing to do with sort of classic World of Warcraft, but is exactly the kind of thing that I think players will, would love for them to have the opportunity to go and do when they're not doing mythics and raids. Okay, fourth on my list of things that I think MMOs should borrow from Gacha Games is better UI, or more interconnected UI. I'm sorry, but Gacha Games are light years ahead of most MMOs in terms of how they connect the different pieces of their systems together through UIs. For instance, let's just take a look at a typical example of something I'd want to do in Honkai Star Rail. So say I wanted to upgrade Gwenaifen here from Honkai Star Rail. So I go over here, I'm like, hey, her skills need to be upgraded, right? They're not where they should be. And I click on the UI element for upgrading this particular skill, right? Blazing Welcome. And it tells me I need these materials in order to upgrade. They're right here. Now, I don't know what these materials are or what they're called or even, how to get them. But that's okay. The game's got me covered. I can click on this and it says, oh, this is an Obsidian of Obsession. It tells me what it is. And more importantly, it tells me not only how many that I own, but where I can go to get them. And say I wanted to do, I can make them with material synthesis. I can exchange other materials with them through material exchange, or I can just grind whatever content that I need in order to do so, in order to play it. And if I click on that, it tells me, hey, this is where you need to go on the map in order to do that particular thing. And then, oh yes, I could also actually just teleport directly there to that location on the map and then begin participating in that content. And that's just one example. Every system in the game is connected like that. And if you look at most MMOs these days, there are as many currencies and as many interrelated systems as just about any gacha game, and they could all hugely benefit from that kind of interconnectedness. So for instance, if I want to upgrade some gear on my warrior, right? And so I'm like, hey, I'd like the better pants than this 616 item level pants. Well, right here on this UI, there's no reason why there can't be an upgrade button on this. When I click on the upgrade button, it basically shows, hey, here's a list of all of the cool pieces of gear that you could go and get at your item level right now to improve this particular gear. And then for any one of those pieces of gear, there should be another button that then takes you to that specific activity. If it's a dungeon, like an LFR dungeon or something like that, it could queue you up directly for that activity right then and there. Or at the very least, it should put a pin on your map so that you can fly over to that activity directly. That sort of interconnectedness is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Finally, and this last one is probably the hardest, but also I think is the most important. But the last thing that I think that MMOs should be doing, that Gacha Games are already doing, is to provide better crossplay options between PC, console, and mobile. Now, yes, there have been crossplay MMOs on console and PC for quite some time, right? Final Fantasy XIV has had a PlayStation version out for as long as it's been around. They recently just moved to Xbox as well. And they're probably the best at this so far. But I'm not aware of any MMO that's delivering on all three, console, mobile, and PC. For instance, EVE Online has a version of their game that's for mobile called EVE Echoes, but it's a completely different game. And the same goes for Black Desert Online and Black Desert Mobile, right? Those are very similar games, but they're different and they have different servers, and there's no crossplay between the two of them. And to a certain extent, that's understandable, right? Because mobile games and PC games have always sort of had different monetization schemes and catered to different game styles. But Gacha Games kind of came along and showed us that the differences aren't as great as we expect or as we thought. And that you can have a fantastic experience on mobile and have that same fantastic experience on PC and console, and gamers will play it. I mean, Wuthering Waves is a skill-based action RPG, but they're knocking it out on mobile and people are loving it, right? So you can definitely do this. So I just really think that in the future, if I were building an MMO today, I would absolutely start off from ground zero, thinking about how my console version was going to work and how my mobile version was going to work. So see, we managed to talk all about some of the great things from Gacha Games, and I didn't mention Battle Pass or Hero Pulls one time, right? The thing is, as gamers, we tend to kind of turn our nose up at games from other genres than the ones that we're currently playing, and especially from other platforms, right? And I was one of those people myself up until recently. I had long dismissed mobile games as sort of not being real games at all. And it wasn't until some of those games came to my favorite platforms like consoles and PCs that I started realizing, hey, there's a lot in these games that I'm really enjoying as an MMO player. And I would love to see sort of, jump the gap from gacha to MMO. And I think that's important. I think that's an important thing to realize is that all games have elements in them that are fantastic, I think, and would be well used in other types of games. And that's really the kind of thing to think about when you're building or designing or thinking about how you could improve this particular game you're working on is, are there elements from other games that you're missing out on that have been very commonplace for a long time that perhaps you should be taking advantage of? Anyway, I think that'll do it for this episode of I'm Still Playing. So are you an MMO player who also loves gacha like I am? Or perhaps vice versa? Are there some things from Gacha Games that you would like to see brought over from and into your favorite MMO? I mean, we know that there are some things we don't want to see, but that's the subject of a different video, right? Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think. And if you're enjoying this content, well, then you already know what to do. Until next time, whatever you're playing, I hope you have a great time and you enjoy your gaming wherever you find it.